What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today is another episode of Annie Off the Cuff, where I give you my unfiltered thoughts on all things training, business, life, etc. Today we are going over 10 best, in my opinion, exercises for strength and hypertrophy training. I will give you my 10 best and why I think that they are the winners. If you're new here, I am Annie Miller. I am a strength and conditioning specialist as well as a business mentor to other coaches, and I help you learn as you train and enjoy your lifts again without having to figure it out for yourself. Now, as I said in the intro, we are going to go over the 10 best exercises, in my opinion, for building strength and hypertrophy. It is very important that you keep that in mind. These are not the best 10 bodybuilding exercises. These are the best 10 exercises for upper, lower, and core for both building strength, I believe, and building hypertrophy. They're gonna be bang for your buck. Some are gonna have purposes that are different than others. Without further ado, let us begin listing exercises. So we're gonna start off with the lower body, which is my personal favorite to train, and I just think so important in both building strength and building your overall physique. I know a lot of ladies love to train the lower body. I'm gonna start off with back squat. Does everybody need to back squat? Absolutely not. Mike Boyle would say you absolutely don't need to back squat. That's for another time. But I think there are so many benefits to back squatting from a physique standpoint and a strength standpoint. It could be front squat as well. I'm just choosing back squat because in most seasons, I have preferred back squat to front squat. Front squat is amazing as well. I will say front squat tends to be more quad dominant, and I find back squat to be a more well-rounded movement that's obviously biased. So maybe you feel front squats in your glutes and your quads, and you don't quite feel your glutes or your quads or what have you in a back squat. So for me, the back squat is just a really well-rounded lower body movement. We are getting the triple flexion of the ankles, the knees, and the hips. Ideally, you're able to squat below parallel. That would be the only kind of caveat here. If you are not able to squat parallel, then I would do a heel elevated squat, but only to get a proper squat below parallel, not necessarily to purposefully bias the quads, which is going to happen if you do elevate the heel, allows the knees to drive over the toes more, and we get a bigger stretch on the quads. We have axial loading, so we're loading the spine, we're getting some pillar strength, you're working your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, as well as your core. Your upper back should even be tight. It is really a full body movement, which is gonna be great for overall muscle building and strength. The second leg exercise is a B stance RDL. I chose that for a few specific reasons. One, I chose an RDL over a deadlift. You will not hear me say conventional deadlift in this. I do not think that the overall systemic load of a deadlift is worth the strength and muscular gains that you get from it. I know people are gonna come at me for that. But as far as building the physique, we can really heavily load an RDL and get a much higher stimulus on the hamstrings, which are lacking in the squatting pattern. And my other exercise that I chose is also a squatting pattern. So I wanted to choose a lower body exercise that biased the hamstrings heavily, but was still a hinge. So we're not losing the hinge. We are just doing it with less knee flexion. If you would rather choose a conventional deadlift, you can do that. This is my list. So I am gonna say back squat, and then I'm gonna say B stance RDL, so that we do have some unilateral leg work in here. It is not quite single leg, so balance is not gonna be a limiting factor, so we can still really push strength with that B stance RDL because that balance is not a limiting factor. It also gets us our hinge, and we get a lot of hamstring work in one exercise. So number 3 is the Bulgarian split squat. I don't give a fuck how you load it, okay? I just think that it is one of the greatest lower body exercises ever created. I would say you can disagree with me, but then you would just be wrong. It is fantastic. We get extreme range of motion on the glutes and the quads. Who doesn't want to be Quadzilla and have a juicy butt? I don't know. If you're here and you don't want those things, you're in the wrong place. So I chose a Bulgarian split squat. As I said, I don't really care how it's loaded. I would maybe add to this that I would elevate the front foot just so that we are getting even a deeper range of motion. You can play with this exercise. So we can make it more glute dominant if we want to. We can make it more quad dominant if we want to. There's so many little tricks and variations that you can do with the Bulgarian split squat. We're also also getting that unilateral work. So it is not maybe a full single leg like a unassisted step up, but it is certainly a single leg bias, a heavily single leg bias exercise. And that's going to benefit us both in our bilateral squatting strength, as well as we're getting mobility in here. So if you can't quite squat to parallel, maybe you can get below parallel in a split stance squat. That is why I chose it. It is one of my favorite exercises. You can do them for capacity, for hypertrophy. You can do them at lower loads for strength. They're just such a versatile movement and you can get so much out of them. I couldn't not put them on my list. That gives us our 3 first exercises. It was really hard in lower body not to choose a hip thrust or a step up. You could make a really good case for step ups to be in here. You could make a good case for a lot of different exercises, but as far as just strict strength and hypertrophy, I just prefer the Bulgarian split squat. Let's move on to upper body. And first off, just let me know, do you agree in the comments below? Do you agree with those 3 or any of those 3? Do you disagree? What would be your 3 lower body exercises? Let me know in the comments below. Now let's move on to upper body. I was surprised. I actually, when I first made this list, had 5 upper body exercises. And I was like, dang, this is interesting to me. Why do I have this many? But I just think with lower body, we kind of have like squatting patterns and hinging patterns. In the upper body, we have horizontal pushing and pressing, vertical pushing and pressing. And so there's just a lot of different directions that I felt I could go with upper body. I landed on 4 exercises. They are starting off with incline bench press. You will find that I do not have bench or overhead press in this list. Incline bench press is just one of the most useful and possibly underutilized exercises in both building strength and hypertrophy. It is right in between bench press and overhead press. We are getting our anterior and some medial delt. We are also heavily getting our chest. There's just so much bang for your buck in an incline bench press. And I'm gonna say dumbbell incline bench press to be specific, because we can get that really big stretch at the bottom, which we know is going to be beneficial for recruiting the most possible muscle fibers. Again, going to be beneficial for strength or hypertrophy. Moving on, the next exercise is neutral grip pull-up, also known as a P grip. That's just gonna be like this. Width might depend on the machine that you are using. It's just the most comfortable pull-up position, in my opinion. We are, again, kind of in that in-between. So we have a chin up here where the hands are supinated, palms are facing back. We have more bicep bias. And then we have a pull-up where the hands are pronated, facing out. That's gonna be more upper back and lat. The neutral grip is just in between both of those. You're gonna get your back, you're gonna get your lats. Obviously, we're doing a pull-up, but also you do have a bit more bicep in there as well. I'm not going to put bicep curls on this, so it was important to choose both pull-up and rowing patterns that were going to touch muscles that we're not going to isolate when we can only choose 10 exercises total. So those are my first 2 upper body, DB incline bench press and neutral grip pull up. My next one is going to be a chest supported row. Is there anything better than a chest supported row? You can't cheat it. You get a huge stretch across the back, and you can only use your back to pull. It's just such a freaking solid rowing exercise. If you've never done them, I highly encourage you to do so. On an incline, we have a bit of restriction because we're not gonna get that huge stretch across the entire back, but it's still a great option. You obviously have to be on a high enough surface or elevate the bench to be able to do a chest supported row, but if you can, it absolutely makes the top 10 best exercises for building strength and hypertrophy. You are going to blast your mid and upper back with a bench supported row. The last upper body exercise might make you chuckle. It might take away all my credibility, but I just like pumpkin shoulders, and in order to get those pumpkin shoulders, we need this exercise. It is a classic lateral raise. I hope you don't hate me. I hope you don't think I'm silly for this. But when I look at this, we're getting the chest with the incline bench, and we are getting some shoulder. but I really like a rounded shoulder. We're gonna get the rear delts with the pull-ups as well as the rows, certainly with the rows. That lateral raise is just gonna round out those shoulders. Certainly not a strength exercise, but absolutely an exercise that should be used for hypertrophy when we are looking at the upper body. If you are like, no, I would much rather have a tricep specific exercise. Like if you're gonna choose a isolation, maybe you're like, how did she not do a bicep curl? How did she not do an overhead tricep extension, right? Get the short and the long head of the tricep. You do you. I prefer shoulders. You're gonna get enough tricep, in my opinion, with the incline bench press. You're gonna get enough bicep in the pulling exercises for me. But I can absolutely see putting in a different isolation exercise for the upper body. I also put in here kind of as my honorable mention, or another exercise that you could add to this is, I don't even know what you would call it, but a supine lat pullover with a skull crusher. So you not only go overhead with the lat pull, but then you bend the elbows to pull it back and extend at the top. So you're combining a lat pullover, a dumbbell lat pullover, and a skull crusher. I mean, that would destroy your lats and your triceps. I had that exercise on here as well, but did decide to take it off. That wraps up upper body. We had incline bench, DB incline bench, neutral grip pull up, chest supported row, and lateral raise. So we have 3 more exercises left, and they are all core. You might be like, why? Why are you wasting 3 spots on core? Because this is a strength and hypertrophy list. And to me, in order to build maximal strength, your pillar, your core is so important. And I couldn't not choose all of these. I just couldn't take away any of them. I think they're so beneficial. So number 1 for core is a hanging knee or leg raise of some variation. Hang from a bar and roll that pelvis up. Use your entire core, bent knees with straight legs, 1 knee at a time, 1 leg at a time. I don't care. Just some kind of hanging leg raise. It is going to be so beneficial for the functionality of your core. Also, a lot of core work can tend to be anchored at the feet or supine. This just gives you a different option. The next one is going to be carry. Double arm, single arm. I don't know if I care. Double or single arm. We'll leave it down at the side. So unilateral or bilaterally loaded, I do not care, but being able to pick something up and walk with it is possibly one of the most functional things you need to know how to do as a human for the lifespan. I think being able to bend down, pick something up, and walk with it is just, it's an underused movement. And like really challenging loads, either really challenging volume, so distance, light load for a long distance, or really challenging loads. We're getting grip strength, we're getting pillar strength, and we're also getting kind of sneaky cardio. If you've ever picked up something heavy and walked with it, it is sneaky cardio. So there's just too many benefits to doing carries to not have them make this list, especially if the list is going to include strength. That's my piece. That's all I will say on that. The last one is another one of those like functional movements, either an elevated bird dog, so where the knees are off the ground, which if you can't do that, you could just do a bird dog, or a quadruped bear crawl. I could not decide between these two. Both very functional, both beneficial for just building a well-rounded core, as well as building strength. So in a hanging leg raise, the core is moving. You're gonna experience spinal flexion. In a carry, that is not the case. And in an elevated bird dog or a quadruped bear crawl where the back is staying parallel to the floor and the arms and legs are moving, we're having to find a neutral spine and keep it while our limbs move around the pillar. Especially in strength training, that is going to be one of the most important things that you can train your body to do. So that is why that makes the list. So that is it. That wraps up my list. It was very difficult to not include like rotational work, a lot of transverse plane work, a lot of even frontal plane side to side movement, because again, if we were looking at this list through the lens of strength and hypertrophy, when you could only choose 10 exercises, we just don't need a lot of transverse rotational work or even frontal plane work, which is just like side to side abduction work. I mean, you have the lateral raises, but other than that, that's really kind of it. So let me know what you think. Do you agree with these? Would you choose different ones? Did you absolutely hate some of them? Keep it respectful, be nice in the comments below. But that does wrap up this episode of Annie Off the Cuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.